So yes, we are going to speak now of some flavor components, and as it is true, and what you said, Jen, that at ISVV particularly, but also in other groups in the world, but ISVV particularly, we were working a lot on the understanding of the flavor component in the wine, and particularly what kind of component can contribute to the unique perception, to some typicality or typicity. But what is also important, as a long work has been done into the knowledge of some odorant compounds, onto the knowledge of volatile compounds, able to participate, to contribute to this aromatic typicality or typicity, it is also important to have a new key of lecture in 2022. What do we interpret today for the aromatic quality and typicality of the wine, and particularly varietal aromatic typicality? Just for presenting my presentation as an introduction, I would like to speak of this term of typicity or typicality. In French, we say typicité, which was a term chosen by Denis Dubourdieu when he founded ISVV. This term could be said also identity, unique character, and it is a term that evokes a particular sensory expression of the wine aroma, and particularly which makes the wine recognized by its origin and very positively considered and appreciated. Typicality, it is a term of the young wines and also the term of the aged wine. What is important to say, and this has been understood thanks to the interpretation by cognitive psychologists, so it is an important science to which oenology can connect also, cognitive psychology. That is, this typicality recognition by the wine tester, it is related to the wine tasting experience. It is not something that is immediately recognized by the wine tester. It needs to be experienced. And what is also important, that say to us, the cognitive psychologist, it is that typicality, typicity, is interpreted at our brain level as a process of categorization. That is, a wine tester, why is doing a wine tasting, is not only describing the product in terms of aroma, for example, is trying to make the links between the aroma he is perceiving and some other memory of odors he has in mind in relation with his wine tasting experience. So this is a phenomenon of categorization process that appears at the brain level during the wine tasting. Now we are speaking more in details of the varietal component. So varietal component, it is a particular expression of a variety, which is generally not perceived a lot in the grape. And as we noticed, it is frequently released, or I would say revealed, during the vinification process and sometimes during aging. So this varietal component, it is a link between the grape variety and the specific flavor. What we know also, that is this aromatic typicality, this varietal aromatic typicality, is modulated by the natural factors, the climate, the soil component, the hydric deficit, so what we rely with the terroir in French, and also, very important, with all the human choices, with the choices of the people in the vine, with the choices of the people in the cellar. All these parameters shall strongly impact onto the varietal aroma component. So let's have a look more in details on the perception, the recognition of this varietal typicality during our wine tasting. And first, asking this question, what is the origin of the diversity of these aromatic nuances in wine? For example, in a red wine with some notes of blackcurrant, of strawberry, of chocolate, of bell pepper, torrefied coffee, or floral nuances. What we know, it is this aromatic diversity in the wines is first related to the presence of volatile compounds in the wine and when we are doing orthonasal perception in the headspace of the wine glass. So there are a large diversity of compounds. Generally, we consider that this diversity is over 100 of components. So this is very important. And these components that are present in the wine, in the liquid, they are present at very large diversity of concentrations. Generally not very important concentrations, but it can be, for example, 300 milligrams per liter for the more abundant volatile compounds in the wine, some fermentative aroma. And also that we know that components, some of them are present at really trace concentration. And frequently, it is a situation for the varietal component related to the presence at trace concentration. Paradoxically, it is not because some components are more abundant that they do impact more on the flavor. And frequently, it is the inverse situation. That is, frequently, trace components are important for the flavor. Why? Because what is important, it is to consider these volatile components and stimuli. So when we are doing wine tasting, it is not all the 100 components, sometimes less, frequently more, that do impact. It is some of them only, some 10 components, 15, maybe sometimes 20, 50, that are stimuli at our olfactory system and permit to first have a detection. It is not conscious detection. It is a detection of our olfactory system that can become a sensation, and then we interpret depending on our wine tasting experience. And these stimuli, they do impact depending on their detection threshold. And so I think all of us, we have this in mind, that we are able to smell better some components than others. Some components, sometimes that they are very odorant, others they are less. And this depends on our personal olfactory threshold. So this is something I think lots of us we know. But what is very important to keep in mind, to consider, that it is the diversity, the complexity of aromatic notes at the brain level as olfactory notes that we are going to interpret is more a combinatorial process. What does that mean, a combinatorial process? That is, this detection of notes, it is due to a combination of selected components considered as stimuli that are there interpreted in the field of consciousness. So what we are speaking about in the next slides, it is first speak about these selected odorant volatile compounds, and then we are speaking about this combinatorial process, what we understand today. So I give you just an example in this slide, the diversity of wine components that originate from the grape initially. So some of the components are relied onto various families of volatile components. So there are, for example, some monoterpenes or terpenes that are related to the floral aroma of muscat wine varieties. We have also some components called parasines, methoxyparasine, that are involved into some vegetative characters. Frequently, we speak of green bell pepper in Cabernet Sauvignon, in Carmenère, sometimes in Merlot and other varieties. So this is also a component, this is also a representative of component originating from the grape. We have also some components originating from carotenoids, and some of them are called nor-isoprenoids. So these nor-isoprenoids that are components with both fruity, sometimes floral character that participate to the aroma of lots of wine, young wines. And there are also some components more related with the aging character. And an example of compound originating from the grapes that contribute to enhancing character. It is the component called as TDN with a character of kerosene-like, petroleum-like nuances we sometimes smell in some Riesling wines. Then we have some sesquiterpenoids components that belong to the terpenes family, with one representative that was identified 10 years ago in some Shiraz wines and is now evidenced in several grape wine varieties. Then we have also a family of compounds on which we worked a lot in Bordeaux, varietal thiols, compounds with fruity notes of blackcurrant, of grapefruit, compounds that participate to the flavor of Sauvignon Blanc, with box tree nuances also, Semillon, we shall speak about on Riesling, Chenin, but also it is important to mention sometimes through this combinatorial process to the flavor of some red wine varieties, Cabernet Sauvignon, Shiraz, and others, Pinot, and so on. And then we have some other sulfur components that also originate from the grape, dimethyl sulfide, that can contribute to some wine aging character. Then there are some compounds on which Alexandre Ponche shall speak about that are more related to the over-ripening phenomena in the grape and contribute to overripe nuances, components representative of furanones or lactones associated with sometimes development of noble rot. So there are a large diversity of compounds. So these compounds can contribute through their specific flavor to the aroma of some wines, depending on the concentration and also the perception threshold of the wine tasters. When we speak of this compound, just recall this point, they are generally not specific to a grape variety. When we identify one compound, it is present to a large diversity of varieties. What can change? It is the concentration, which can be more abundant in the wines of one variety in comparison with others. But it was not the situation in 20 years ago. We were thinking that some components were really specific to some grape varieties. Another point regarding these components originating from the grape, they are frequently present at trace concentration. I was speaking about microgram per liter, nanogram per liter, or even lower, but they can have a sensory impact while they are presented with low concentration. And last point, which is also very important, these components are sometimes presented volatile odorant compounds in the grape, but frequently they exist mainly under precursor form in the grapes as S conjugates, as carotenoids I was speaking about, as glycosides, sometimes lipids, and also compounds issued from chemical reaction in the grape. So it is important to consider that a large part of the wine varietal aroma is related to compounds present in the grape as under the form of precursors, and they need to be released, transformed in order to perceive their specific flavor. I would like to speak about some work again concerning green notes. So it is an example that we know that green notes has been cited from the work done in the past to some compounds called C6 alcohol, C6 aldehyde, like hexanol, hexanol, hexanal, hexanal. These compounds can sometimes contribute more in the grape juice than in the wine, and important to consider also as compounds related with green notes. We have some methoxypyrazine that are compounds known since more than 40 years, compounds on which a lot of work has been done. But it is important to keep in mind that regarding green notes, there is still to understand, still to discover of compounds, sometimes known, other times not known in the same context, that can contribute to some green notes, sometimes positively considered by the wine tester. How can we do in order to progress understanding the nature of this compound? First, doing research work combining sensory evaluation of wine and analysis of wine odorant. isolating some specific fractions from the wine, because frequently these compounds, as I said previously, are present at trace concentration. So when we look onto some grid notes, we can consider positively some notes related with mint, some with notes with eucalyptus, and so on. So I give you some example of a work done by Xavier Poitou, who did his thesis in our research unit under my supervision, regarding a compound, eucalypton or 1A cineol, which is a compound with a recognized flavor of menthol, eucalyptus leaves-like notes, and the detection threshold in natural red wine at 0.7 microgram per liter, which is very well known since lots of years. It is work from Hervé, from Capone, from Antalic. That is, this compound can have an exogenous origin in the wine, and particularly relatively with the proximity, the vicinity of eucalyptus trees in Australia, in California, in Chile, to the wine plants. So we can observe a transfer of eucalyptol from the leaves onto the grape, an impact of terroir on a certain matter. What is important to consider also, and Xavier contributed to this point, it is a varietal origin of this compound in Cabernet Sauvignon, in Merlot, in other grape varieties from the same group, from group of Carmenet. Varietal origin, that means that this compound is also synthesized, produced in the grape berry during its development. And what observed by Xavier, it is that, like for Parazine, the content of these components are decreasing during the ripening. So this compound has more or less the same tendency as the Methyl they progressively disappear, diminish during the grape ripening. It is more or less the same situation. So we can observe as a varietal origin, and it is the context of some grape variety for which the ripening is observed under cooler conditions, the presence of this 1H cineol contributing to varietal expression of Cabernet and Merlot when the grapes are not over-ripened. Another example I would like to present to you is a compound. I would not say it is specifically from a varietal origin, but it originates from the grape, which is methyl salicylate. This compound was studied by lots of researchers in the 1990s by Giuseppe Versini and his group. And we were considering this specific compound regarding work onto the green notes in the wine, and particularly in the French red wines and Cabernet Sauvignon particularly. This compound, methyl salicylate, can be associated with the perception of green character, and it can contribute to some notes of camphorous, some notes of what we call wintergreen. So some notes that can be considered with some character of freshness and positively considered. What is the origin of this compound? The origin is a grape, but particularly an origin of vine defense phenomena. That is, it is produced by the vine plant, particularly when, depending on the environmental conditions, depending on the plant material, it can be the clone, as was shown by Xavier, depending also onto the development of some diseases onto the vine plant, like ESCA and sometimes downy mildew. So regarding the origin, it can be associated to healthy grapes or non-healthy grapes. What is also important to mention, and with regards to some vinification process, it is this compound is much more abundant in the stem. It is abundant in the skin, but much more in the stem. This compound is quite odorant with a sensory detection threshold in the range of 70 micrograms per liter as average detection threshold. Paradoxically, it is observed that the detection threshold of this compound, depending on some person, can be very low, in the range of 10 micrograms per liter. So there is a difference in sensibility of the wine testers depending on this compound. Frequently, the concentration are not at this level, but sometimes it can be at this level, depending on the situation. Recently, it was shown by our Italian colleague, the presence of this compound in Lugana and Verdicchio white varieties, not red varieties. This compound is extracted or released by various origin, maybe extraction from the skin, released from glycoside during the vinification. And so depending on the condition, can contribute also to the green character on some grain wine. So this was the example of the interesting of knowing new compound. Now I would like to speak on this complex phenomena of the perception as a blend with a mixture of volatile compounds, like it is a situation when we are doing a wine tasting. And when I speak of this phenomena, I would like to speak of perceptual interaction phenomena. It is a term that it is used when we are studying the perception of volatile compounds in nature. This study is not only considered as the aspect of oenology, but much more as the aspect of the study of perfume and in the food industry. What is interesting to notice? The first point, it is that when the compounds are in mixture, we can have observation of quantitative effects. That is, when the compounds are present in mixture, we can have a modification of the intensity, frequently an enhancement of the intensity of the sensory perception due to the mixture of several volatile compounds. Also, we can observe some qualitative effects, that it is a modification of the quality of the sensory perception. Quality of the sensory perception through a masking effect. Sometimes we can observe this kind of situation. And also a situation of creation of a new smell, a synthetic perception. That is, the blend of several volatiles can be responsible for the perception of a new odor. Just this example I give you, it is very well known in the food industry, when there is a mix of ethyl isobutyrate smelling the strawberry with ethyl maltol, caramel toffee, the flavor perceived, it is not strawberry, it is not caramel toffee, it is pineapple. And so these phenomena are very abundant in the nature, and some of them have been evidenced in the research. So I am going to speak to you of some examples. It was shown a long time ago, first, that with the mixture of some volatile compounds from the same family can enhance the flavor. So, for example, regarding the monoterpenes contributing to the muscat character, when there is a mixture, the flavor can be perceived as more intense, and which was observed a long time ago by Jean-Noël Boidron and Pascal Bérogaillon in the 1970s. But it has been also shown recently for monoterpenes, for example, in some brandies of cognac, this phenomenon. This additive phenomena has also been shown by Elise Sarrazin for volatile thiols and also for lactones by the group of Vicente Ferreira. Now, there are also a context of a blend of compounds not belonging to the same family, for example, some ethyl esters of fatty acid, or some acetates of higher alcohols, which are frequently considered as fermentative aroma. And it was shown by several authors, particularly in Bordeaux by the group of Jean-Christophe Barbe, how these components altogether contribute to the enhancement of the fruity character in red wines, and also to the different perception of fruity character. It can be said also that when there is a blend of some ester component with beta-damascenone, a C13 or isoprenoid, or monoterpenes with beta-damascenone, we can also observe an enhancement of the flavor perceived and a different perception. So all these phenomena are very interesting, and currently an important research is done on this topic. I would like to present you two examples to illustrate this point. First, one example regarding 3-sulfanyl-hexanol, which is a thiol, which was identified in Bordeaux white by my colleague Tommy Naga in the 1990s, and also in the red we did in the same period. So this compound can be found both in some white and red wine varieties. Its flavor, it is a flavor of grapefruit, a passion fruit. So it is a flavor very well recognized for this character. What was shown? It was shown the contribution of this compound to the typicalities, to the character, specific character, not only of Sauvignon Blanc, but several white varieties, Chenin and also Chardonnay, as it was observed in Bordeaux by Gros in 2015, and also in Capone, by Capone in Australia. We evidenced that there was a strong link between the recognition of Riesling wine typicality in the context of a collaborative project done by with our colleagues of German University, Geisenheim University. So there was a strong link between the content of this compound, recalling grapefruit and passion fruit, with the recognition of the typicality of some Riesling wine from Rheingau with some notes of lemon and peach. So you can notice that, in fact, a compound smelling a particular odor can be much related with the recognition of other nuances during the wine sensory. And also, it should be important to mention that this same compound was shown by Rigoux, by Alain Blanchard, by Louis Blanchard, to reinforce the fruity aromatic component of some red wine varieties, not only white. I would like to speak of a work I contributed with the supervision of Tracy, but also Tracy was supervised by my colleague from Australian Wine Research Institute, to the recognition of fresh apricot nuances in Viognier wine. It is a good example to illustrate at the point where we are in the recognition of flavor component. So we know, maybe you discover that wine from Viognier frequently are recognized by an apricot character. But what was shown from Viognier from Australia, from Viognier from France, that there is no compound smelling apricot in Viognier wines. So what was the approach developed by Tracy at the WRI, so Australian Wine Research Institute? It was to try to correlate the recognition of apricot nuances in the large diversity of Viognier wine with the level of abundancy of several components. And so she was able to evidence some relation of apricot character with some monoterpenes, smelling flower nuances, with some lactones, smelling more cooked fruit nuances. And this observation was paradoxical because none of these components was smelling apricot. When Tracy was in Bordeaux, we were studying more the French Viognier wine, doing a fractionation of the wine extracts and isolating some fraction that could recall our apricot notes. And it was possible to evidence some selected fraction, very well smelling apricot nuances. These fractions were then fractionated in order to evidence all the volatile components. And more or less, we could dispatch between three fractions. One fraction in gray was with a low aroma. So you can see a diversity of volatile compounds with low aroma. Then another fraction was with notes of burnt and char. And another was with compounds all implicated, associated with fruity apricot nuances. So all these compounds were evidenced as contributors, exactly we do not know at this stage, to the apricot nuances. And you recognize some monoterpenes, you recognize some lactones, among others. Then what was interesting for the demonstration of the implication of these apricot nuances was the reconstitution studies done by Tracy Seiberg in the context of her PhD thesis. And she evidenced a strong link between the abundancy of monoterpenes, linalol, geraniol, nerol, with the recognition of apricot nuances. So compounds that do not refer at all with apricot notes, they refer with floral nuances. So they are strongly related through a context of perceptual interaction phenomena to the recognition of apricot nuances. Some lactones can contribute also in complement with some monoterpenes, and inversely, some aldehydes have a masking effect onto the recognition of this character. So this is a new interpretation we have today for the notes of apricot, and particularly in Viognier wine, that they do not rely on compounds smelling this character, but on mix of compounds from several families. In conclusion, what I try to evidence you today, it is that the level of knowledge we have currently in the interpretation of the varietal typicity is based on a much more complex shape than the one which was accepted in the 2000. We need to consider the compound, but all the interaction between the compound at our sensory level. Then what is important, it is that when we try to understand during the wine tasting, but also the wine elaboration, the modulation of all these aromatic notes, it is based on a quite complex combination, frequently associated various chemical family. And so this knowledge, I think it is important for the winemaker in order to well adapt the modalities of construction of this typicality by the viticultural choices, for example, the conduct of the vine, the date of harvest for the expectation of some aromatic notes or another, the modalities of vinification, the yeast strain, the modalities of extraction of the juice, and always out the blending effect. So thank you for your attention, and then I give the floor to the next speaker.